So I'm now with Paul. Hello, Paul.
Hello, Janine.
And Paul has a very interesting game called the Cthulhu Hack.
Indeed, yep, it is.
Yes. So when I first saw this, I thought, like, I know the Black Hack, but what is the Cthulhu Hack?
So the Cthulhu Hack takes what David Black did for Dungeons and Dragons, and it does the same for Lovecraft's Cthulhu mythos. So it takes the essentials of what it means to be an investigator, and it uses very simple mechanics to allow you to run games with a minimum of preparation. You can create a character in 5 minutes, and you can get on with enjoying playing a game.
Okay, you say so very simple mechanics. What can you tell us about those mechanics?
Okay, so there are two basic mechanics. There are saves. Now, for anyone who's played Dungeons and Dragons, saves will be familiar because they look like strength, dexterity, constitution. But what you only roll against the saves if you are being threatened in some way. Now, that might be threatened with being injured, or it might be threatened with being captured. But so the game master explains what the consequences of failure are, and you roll against the number and need to get less than it on a 20-sided die. And then the other mechanic are resources, and they represent really the game basically takes the investigators and it attempts to break them. So like the characters in Lovecraft stories, over the course of the story or the investigators become more broken, more detached from humanity. And so when you roll against these resources, you've got flashlights, which is your physical investigation, smokes, which is your social investigation, and you have sanity. And when one of those is tested, you roll a die, and if you roll a 1 or 2 on that dice, it steps down to the next lower die. So if you're on a D8, it would go down to a D6 and then a D4. And then finally, when you roll that D4, you are then completely broken in that respect. You can't see clearly enough to investigate anymore. You can depend upon your friends, but it's meant to be very much the same way that the characters in Lovecraft stories become more broken as their adventures go on. And of course, many of them are driven insane or they die, which is often the way with investigators.
Quite normal, actually.
Yeah.
So I see you have different booklets here. So what is available for the Black Hack, for the Cthulhu Hack right now?
So we have the three core books. So the core rules that has the main game in it, the mechanics, character generation. It has a sample adventure. We then have From Unformed Realms, which is about horrors. So it's a random way of generating new horrors or making the existing horrors different, because one thing that players often have is they expect things. They see something and they expect it to be a certain thing. So this allows you to make it different. And then for investigations, there's The Haunter of the Dark, which has the text of Lovecraft's story, The Haunter of the Dark, but it has notes which show how you could use that story to create your own adventure. And at the beginning of the book, it then shows how you can structure that to actually create your own adventures, and includes a sequel to The Haunter of the Dark. So it takes up from the end of that story and allows you to carry on from there. And then beyond that, there's Three Faces of the Wendigo, which is a set of 3 adventures which are about the Wendigo spirit. They take place over 200 years. You can play them separately or you can have them linked together. There is Through Centuries Fixed, which is a one-off adventure set on an island off the coast of Maine, where the players wake up with amnesia. They can't remember anything, but they realize very quickly that they have lots of connections with other people in town who also are suffering from amnesia, and they need to work out what's going on before something horrible happens. And there is The Dark Brood, which is about the cult of Shub-Niggurath. So that's one of the great old ones, and she represents mutation and change and creation. And this gives ideas on the sort of cultists and organizations which would worship her. It has 3 adventure seeds. It has new creatures and new spells. So it's just expanding the world of the Cthulhu Hack. And also, for this event, I've added a Cthulhu Hack Game Master screen, so that on the one side has all the tables that are used in the game, and then on the other side there is some nice, appropriately Cthulhu art to go with it. And you can then get those in box sets like these ones here. So that's the slim box, which comes with the core rules, or the big box, which has everything that's been released so far.
Okay, so as far as I understood it, but this only covers the stuff that Lovecraft published himself.
Yes, so it focuses absolutely on what is public domain. So everything that Lovecraft did, wrote himself, or which he edited, because Lovecraft liked editing other people's stories, and he more often than not almost rewrote those stories. So Shub-Niggurath is a good example of an entity that Lovecraft added to other people's stories, and they clearly not in the original stories. So it focuses on those areas, which is why the game uses Lovecraft's Elder Sign, because the star with the eye is August Derleth's version of the Elder Sign, which has become connected with other Cthulhu games. So yeah, it focuses on that, which means really for anyone who's running their own games, all of that material is available freely online. I have a connection to all the stories on the Just Crunch website, but you can get all those stories, they're readily available. So it's a nice way to get all of the material without having to spend any money. From the point of view of a reader, and it allows me to use that material freely in my games.
That's great. So for now it's only available in English, but there's a German version planned.
Indeed. So there is a German version planned with Uhrwerk Verlag, the Clockwork Publishing. The plan is to crowdfund that next year. I've been working with Patrick before now in organising the sort of the contract around that. There is also a French version that was crowd-funded earlier this year, and that's going to be produced by a company called 12 Monkeys, and they're releasing the core book along with other investigations they're creating themselves, and they're going to use the system as well in other games which they're calling their Dark Monkey range. And there is a Spanish version being published by Mindscape Publishing. That was also crowdfunded, and that I hope will be available later this year or early next year. So early next year there should be 4 versions of the Cthulhu Hack in print in different languages.
That sounds great, and thank you for your time.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.